Hits of the Century is brought to you by iOmega, maker of the Zip R250MB USB drive.
Few things in the natural world can match the awesome power of a tornado. Now imagine not one, but scores of tornadoes, many of them F5s, the most dangerous kind of all. That's what happened in the Super Outbreak of 1974, our #2 storm of the century.
The Super Outbreak is definitely there's #1 tornado event.
April 3rd, 74 had 30 F4s and 6 F4 plus and 6 F5.
5,000 injuries, I think. In 74? Yeah, it's 310, something like that, fatalities.
The fatalities part also was lessened because there were forecasts.
Yeah, 15 tornadoes on the ground at the same time.
Yeah, if it was just the number of tornadoes, I don't think that would get it, but it had everything. And it was a unique meteorological event.
Now let's take you back to 1974 and the Super Outbreak of tornadoes.
This was an unprecedented event in history before or after. 148 tornadoes affecting 13 states.
The 1974 Super Outbreak was the largest tornado outbreak on record. It has been heavily studied and much has been learned from it.
April 3rd, 1974. A strong surface low accompanied by strong upper air low pressure develops rapidly just east of the Rockies. Combined with warm air surging northward from the Gulf and with the jet stream aloft, the energy needed to create the most intense outbreak of tornadoes in living memory was in place.
I was a grad student at the University of Chicago at the time, working with Dr. Fujita, who developed the Fujita scale for mapping tornado intensity. On April 3rd, we were expecting a tornado outbreak, so we were watching the weather maps. But we had no reason to believe that it was going to be 148 tornadoes covering as wide an area as it did. Certainly the tornado outbreak of the century.
Just for the sake of putting the Super Outbreak in perspective, let's say instead of hitting 70 home runs in one season, somebody came along and hit close to 160 home runs in one season. Well, if you look at the number of F2 or higher tornadoes in the Super Outbreak, that's the magnitude of the gap between the Super Outbreak and the rest of the pack.
All told, of the 148 tornadoes, 30 were F4s or higher, including 6 F5s. But as horrific as these tornadoes were, they were also incredibly valuable and exciting from a scientific standpoint. This outbreak became a living laboratory to further our understanding of how tornadoes form.
Prior to the Super Outbreak, Dr. Fujita had hypothesized that there were embedded funnels that revolved around the parent tornado and had a rotation about their own axis, so that winds within these, what we call suction vortices, may have been 100 miles per hour faster than the parent tornado. The Super Outbreak proved they existed in that there were films taken, movies taken, of the tornadoes containing these suction vortices. As a result of the Super Outbreak and the research from it, we were able to dispel the myth of the skipping tornado. People thinking that my house was spared, the next one was hit, the tornado skipped. That was really because of the existence of suction vortices. The suction vortex and its faster winds hit one house and missed the one next door.
As the storm swept away, they left in their wake 315 confirmed fatalities, the worst death toll from tornadoes in nearly half a century. And no outbreak in the 25 years since has come close to equaling it. Nearly 5,500 others were injured, still countless others left homeless, and damage estimates topped $500 million.
From the air, the damage is scientific. When you get there on the ground, you can see the details. The hot water heater flew 80 yards and landed in the field nearby. There's nothing left but the basement. The clothing and the toys and the dolls are all been displaced. Then the real impact on human life really hits you.
The tornadoes of 1974 bring a lot of unique challenges to the National Guard as well. When a National Guard unit comes into an area that's been devastated by tornadoes, very often we see a range of emotions from shock to happiness at being alive.
1974 changed some things for the Red Cross. The Red Cross was presented with a new opportunity, and that was to help disaster victims in their psychological needs as well as their physical needs.
The scars of the 1974 tornado outbreak can still be seen from the forests of northern Alabama to the rural enclaves of Ohio. Names of towns like Tanner and Goulin, Alabama, Brandenburg, Kentucky, Sailor Park and Xenia, Ohio, and DePaul, Indiana are forever etched in the national consciousness as icons of nature's fierce potential. It affected the lives of tens of thousands of people and accelerated advances in the ability to predict future outbreaks. 1974 served as a focal point for communities all around the country to push for the deployment of Doppler radar to help improve our predictive abilities. This event was also instrumental in motivating the country's engineering community to develop tornado-safe rooms and to design schools to be more tornado-resistant.
After the 1974 super outbreak, there was a push to go to the cutting edge of technology and radar sensor, which was the Doppler radar. Warning time is key to saving lives, and the Doppler radar held out a great deal of promise for additional warning time.
Looking back at the super outbreak after 25 years, I feel proud to have been part of the studies of this event and hope to have contributed toward the understanding of the weather conditions and the behavior of the tornadoes that will go towards saving lives in the future.
The terrible events of April 1974 are still etched in the memories of some Weather Channel viewers.
My sister and I huddled under a couch for 45 minutes while we waited with several other families for the all clear. We found out later that a witness said that he watched the tornado as it skipped around the countryside. It seemed to bounce up and over our community, sparing it from the destruction that befell the major part of the city. I can still recall the sounds that I heard on that afternoon. I remember digging my fingers so far into my ears to try to drown the sound out.
When we come back, we'll go back to the Forecast Center for an update on our weather. And we'll reveal the storm that our experts selected as the #1 storm of the century. An event so fierce it made sand grains spark and shows us to this day how vulnerable our coastal cities are.